put it on the... Yeah, it's me. Totally screwed up. Okay, here's hoping I do it right. Michaela and I, mostly Michaela, has been recording the lectures. So yesterday's lecture is on Canvas. Okay. Please keep in mind the next following few slides, unless it was in bold on the top screen, I really just want you to have the general idea of this. So please don't spend forever trying to write down all of the information on these things. But an artistic lens, then, is looking at things from an aesthetic theory, looking at beauty and the appreciation of beauty. When applied to literature, the aesthetics reference artistic expressions. Scholars study the artistic concepts to promote the importance of art and artistic movement. So when looking at this, you examine the text for its artistic references. Study the references, learn about their connections to both the story and the time period. You guys have probably heard something along these lines. If you've heard of Gothic literature, Baroque literature, thinking of the time periods, the artistic periods, even there was Enlightenment and Renaissance and all of these things, the art that came during that time period, you'd be looking at the literature and how it reflects that artistic movement. Gothic literature being the most famous, and right now a movie just came out from the Gothic. Frankenstein.
Yes.
Has anybody seen it yet? Is it good? Is it good?
It's yeah.
Because I was like, one, I'm not a big Frankenstein fan. Read it in 9th grade. Never want to go back.
I like it.
10 out of 10. No, I probably would. No, I would. I do appreciate Frankenstein. I didn't appreciate the way my teacher did Frankenstein. I love everything about it. If I could teach aside from film lit, if I could teach my own class here, they've been changing up the English classes. I want to do monster theory.
Ooh.
I know. It'd be so
That's
cool.
a great one.
Like, is the monster
Such a
man?
range.
I know. It'd be so
Such
fun.
a range.
Please let me
That'd be
do a
such
monster
cool
theory
class.
class. That would be so fun. And we still watch movies because it wouldn't be a Sylvia class without movies. Right. Biographical lens. A biographical lens is inspired by biographical theory. Crazy idea. It states that the author's life, thoughts, and feelings influence the meaning of the text. So when looking through a biographical lens, you would need to know information about the author's life and background and how you are seeing those experiences and that perspective played out in the text.
Bless you.
Bless you. If you've ever read the book The Color Purple, it is important to understand that Alice Walker's background certainly was in that area, and that does play out in that text a lot.
Bless you.
Bless you.
Okay, I'm gonna keep going. A cultural lens. Yes, there's a reference to Hamilton here. A cultural lens explores how class, race, ethnicity, nationality, religion, political beliefs, and the region affect the way we understand and write texts. This theory is related to many academic disciplines such as politics, law, media studies. So to use a cultural lens, first you have to consider the way we as a society judge the significance of text. Hamilton would not have worked 20 years ago. When looking at a cultural lens, you have to see how culture has evolved and is more willing to accept those concepts. And there was still some pushback. He fought really hard to get that on Broadway. This is when you're looking at a cultural lens. Why did Lin-Manuel write it the way he wrote it? Why did he cast it the way he cast it? All of that is culturally significant, and that's looking through a cultural lens at that piece. Why rap? Why not opera? Well, why were pieces way back? You know, when they're not just operatic pieces, but there was Repo, the Genetic Opera, is an amazing piece culturally. Right time period for that. Would not do well today. Y'all are missing out though. It's a really good one. Yeah. So understanding why pieces are written and how they affect the culture and how culture responds to it. Because releasing this particular text in a different culture would not resonate in the same way. A deconstruction lens really looks at a lot of, we've been talking about binary oppositions, looks at a lot of the oppositions within a text, good versus bad, rich versus poor, majority, minority. In looking at that, you can see how these conflicts create false and unfair favor to one side over the other. No matter what you are reading, what perspective you're from, some side is always favored over the other. It may not be the intention of the author, but humans are biased people. They will always favor one side over another. So a deconstruction lens would identify those contradictions and those conflicts and decide if one side's favored over the other one and what the result is. Is the story the same if we were to flip this narrative? I personally feel like there are other lenses kind of do this like tangentially, and so that's why I prefer the other lenses, because if I'm looking at a feminist lens, I'm looking at oppositions and who favors. If I'm looking at a socialist lens, so looking solely at a deconstruction, I think takes away some of the other elements. Personally, do you guys care? You're just learning this stuff. Okay. A disability lens explores what is considered normal and abnormal for physical and mental capabilities. When this is applied to literature, disability study lens looks at the representation of people as normal and abnormal, and the discrimination that people with disabilities face as a result. Critics strive to show that normal is subjective, because if you have a disability, you are what's normal. The disability is what is normal to you. But texts do not represent it that way. Very rarely do we see pieces written from that perspective. And what is not normal are the experiences outside of that person's purview. Wonder attempts to do this somewhat, right? There's a fantastic book called The Reason I Jump, and it's actually written by an autistic person who that is their normal life. So taking a look at what is normal, what is abnormal, the othering, and a good portion of the lenses will look at that idea of other. We say, this is the baseline. Why? That's not everybody's experience. Their experience is different. An ecological lens, and we will dive more deeply into this before Maleficent. An ecological lens is inspired by eco-criticism. It explores the relationship between nature and humanity. To preserve the natural world, eco-critics use the text to explore how humans represent, interact, and affect, for some reason there's words missing, the natural world. So you would analyze the relationship between the text and the natural world, considering what is deemed natural versus unnatural. Again, we will dive way more deeply into that before we watch Maleficent. What is this? I don't even know this person. there's a pass for somebody who was tardy that I don't even know this person. Okay. You need to go back. Some of you guys are still typey. A formal lens focuses only on the text and finding meaning in the story. It instructs the reader to ignore all other influences and only looks at exactly what's in the text. This is close to what you have done in many of your English classes, but often we blend other things like it's important for you to know that this happened in the author's life. It's important to know this is happening in the world. Formal lens does not allow you to look at any of that. You may only look at the text. Imagine studying Animal Farm without the contextual background. It could just be a book about talking animals. I feel like the background adds so much more. Or Lord of the Flies without knowing that George Orwell used to be a teacher, and these were based on the kids that he used to teach. No, yes, you're right. I just mixed that up. William Golding. George Orwell was Animal Farm. Yes. So at some point in his life, he knew a piggy. And I don't think he had good feelings for that person.
No.
So, yeah.
The way
they wrote a
he died
sequel to Animal Farm.
disrespectful.
Stop that right now. Stop that
Peppa
right now.
Pig goes to the zoo.
Okay. However, continuing with the formal lens, what makes this so difficult beyond you cannot use the author's influences, the author's background, cultural or historical background, you also cannot use your own feelings or experiences, which is almost like impossible. Right? You can only look at the words. You can't have your own experiences coloring that. A gender lens, also known as a feminist lens, I'll most likely call it feminist lens more than I'll say gender lens, but it does apply either which direction. But it does come from feminist theory, and this is looking at how gender is represented in a text, exploring how it creates or challenges the oppression of women. So there are plenty of pieces that challenge that concept of women in society and culture, but it explores how gender roles and expectations exist in literature, and it encourages a breakdown of those cultural definitions of masculine and feminine, and we'll see a lot of that stuff. We'll take a look at several pieces and we'll apply a feminist lens to it. To analyze that role, then you want to look at how gender plays in the story and how the work contributes to knowledge of identities and what we have for expectations, what we expect the certain genders to do, to look like, to behave. And this includes sexuality as well. This falls under that. So queer theory is in here. How gay characters are represented and what their roles are. So taking gender criticism, feminist criticism a little bit further, because again, I said we will get more in depth with this one. Examining those gender roles and power structures and how that works in literature. Questions like, are there female or homosexual characters present in the work? What might the absence or limited appearance of these characters imply? Why do no girl hobbits go on Frodo's adventure? So things to think about, questions to have. Are the female or homosexual characters characterized in largely positive or largely negative ways? Are they stereotypical? Like, what is the gay best friend? How does he act? Exactly the same in every representation. And so talking about that and what that expectation is and what those roles are. Are they given characterization at all? Do they have growth? Are they static? Are the women just there as engines to move the plot along? Are the men just there as engines to move the plot along? Because let me tell you about any romance movie, dudes have the same role. They're the same guy every time. They are not dynamic characters. I don't care. I still want to live my Hallmark love story. Still looking for the dude. Okay. Do the female or homosexual characters play an active role in determining their fate? Do they save themselves? Not usually. Or are they largely objects that require action from male characters? They don't do anything until there's a man there to do it for them. Sometimes even a boy child. Historical lens. A historical lens, yes ma'am? Yeah. A historical lens studies the influence of the events and experiences of the time period of the author and the time period of the work of literature. So sometimes those are two separate things. So taking a look at the historical events of when the author was writing and looking at the historical events that the piece is based on. A fantastic example of this would be Arthur Miller's The Crucible, which is based on the Salem witch trials. So you'd have to study the things about the Salem witch trials and understand that from a historical perspective and what he was talking about. But it's also really important to know that Arthur Miller wrote the play The Crucible, the witch trials, during the McCarthy trials of the 1950s. And he was calling it a witch hunt and studying the historical significance of why this play right now at this time. We saw this again just a few years ago with the Me Too movement. And it becomes a witch hunt. For that one time, that guy, he said something that was kind of sideways and now canceled him. Yeah. Some people deserve to be canceled. Some people, like, oh my God, guys, it was 20 years ago. It was the one time they said something terrible when they were 25. We all do. Thank goodness.
What if they were just having a really bad day? It doesn't matter if they said all of the slurs that exist.
No, okay, right. Well, there's some weird range, right? In which case, there's some things that are never acceptable, but
Talk to Carl about that one.
wasn't it like Gunn? Was Guardians of the Galaxy director, like they tried to cancel him over some statement 20, 25 years old.
I feel like there is a point, but at the same time, you can't blame being young and immature when there is a point, like at that point you should know what you're doing. You should know what you're wrong.
I have heard things come out of y'all's mouths that you will be ashamed you ever said in 20 years.
I don't know about y'all.
Y'all. Every last one of the people in this room will have said something that they would really prefer not be made public. Like, I probably should have thought better before I said those words. Now imagine your entire life being ruined because of something crappy you said when you were stupid.
I feel like there's an age, like when you're a teenager it's fine, but like when you're like in your mid-20s and you're saying something crazy,
It's entirely contextual.
Yeah, and then there's a lot of that. Like these things are, and we now live in a world of internet in which a good portion of these people didn't live in a world of internet or didn't understand the reach in which internet was going to be. But just existing now, everything you say or do can be recorded, and sometimes we say and do not awesome things. And contextual is super important. You can get one phrase off of me and I'm done, and that's not what it meant. Anytime I see something on the internet and they say like, oh, so-and-so said this, I try to go find the original so I get the full context. Like Megyn Kelly's statement with context is still horrific if you haven't heard it. She says that there's a difference between sleeping with a 15-year-old and sleeping with a 5-year-old. And when I was like, I want to find the context. Context doesn't make it better. It's still pretty awful. She tried to justify it, so.
Did you make that song since you've been
But
young?
it's not that bad. It's not a 5-year-old.
It was bad. Okay?
That's a big deal.
Continuing then with that historical criticism, this assumes that readers should know the historical context or circumstances of the time during which the author wrote or the setting of the story. like we were just talking about Animal Farm, it's important to understand the historical significance of the Russian Revolution in order to understand Animal Farm. So if you were with me and we studied that, then you know we did a historical lens when we looked at that. Right. So how does the historical setting of the story influence the events of the story or the themes that are present? How does the context of the times during which the author wrote influence these factors? A post-colonial lens then looks at the relationship between colonized people and the colonizers. So this also uses terms like imperialism. It extends the country's power through conquest. A post-colonial lens focuses on the perspectives of past and current colonized people. So when looking at a text from an area that has been colonized, looking at what their past texts looked like, and then looking at the difference with current texts. Looking at the difference between enslaved peoples in America and how their songs changed to adapt Christianity, and those their beliefs changed to adapt Christianity, or the birth of Creolism and that whole concept. So a post-colonial lens would talk about how colonization changed them and then changed the texts that they produced. Okay. Continuing with that post-colonial criticism then, when looking at colonizing forces, thinking about how are colonized people portrayed if they're referenced in the text. If you read Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness, talking about people as savages and primitive, and these, so how are the colonized people referenced? Yes, ma'am? Yes. What cultural conflicts exist and how are they resolved? Barbara Kingsolver's Poisonwood Bible is great for this, because it's white people going to Africa and showing the differences between their 1950s Baptist Christianity against 1950s Congolese culture, and how those colonized people adjust and how the not colonized people adjust. How are the colonized portrayed as others within the text? So it is also problematic, same text, or text being told from a white perspective about colonized people. Post-colonialists will look at the other perspective in the story and try to find the counter narrative. What does it look like from the other perspective? This we saw with Hoodwinked, looking at things from the Big Bad Wolf's version of events. It looks different. There has been an increase in looking at the villain's perspective, seeing from the other way, that maybe we aren't always the good guys, and colonizers always think they're the good guys. Nobody asked you to come here and save us. A psychological lens comes from psychoanalytic theory. This does come from Freud, so it can get kind of weird, right? And the studies on the human psyche. This identifies a similarity between unconscious dreams and literary works. Freud applied his techniques to literature by examining the author's hidden desires or repressed feelings. The reason the lamp is yellow is because she wanted to sleep with her dad. It's very Freudian, yes. Everybody wants to sleep with their parents in Freudian perspective. I don't know. He had issues. Okay? But using a psychological lens relating hidden feelings or wishes and emotionally significant events in the story to a psychological state of the characters or author. We did touch on this a little bit when discussing Lord of the Flies last year, or the year before for some of you, or not at all for, sadly, some of you. When thinking about Lord of the Flies and taking a look at the concept of the id, ego, and the superego, that is a psychological lens, viewing how people make those decisions based on their inner desires or their inner morals. This is also where dream theory comes in a lot. I really tried to work this unit. I wanted to do Alice in Wonderland from a psychological lens. Oh, it would have been so good. I might do it during fourth period just for shits and giggles.
Oh, no, like the 3 people in there for it?
Oh, there ends up being like 20 people in my D lunch for some reason. But yeah, Leo and I were working on this unit. He's like, that would be a really good one. I can't make it fit. That would be next semester. I'd have to cut out one of the other films. I would have replaced Shrek with.
No, not Shrek.
I know. I want you guys to have the archetypal lens anyway. I'd rather add lens than lose a lens. The reader lens is about the reader. A reader's lens is created from reader response theory, and this theory stresses the importance of your interaction with the text to arrive at meaning. A reader lens is solely based on your experience, your interpretation, not knowledge of any of the outside factors, not knowledge of the author's background, but you read the text and you have a visceral reaction to the text, and that is based on your experiences. In one of my college classes, teacher had us read this poem. It's called My Papa's Waltz. And as you were reading it, you're going along and it sounds like there's this kid and he's dancing with his dad in the kitchen before he's like taken off to bed. And there were 7 of us in this class. It was a senior level. We're looking at it. And 5 of those people in the class were like, it's so cute. It's this great moment between a son and his father and these things. And myself and one of my friends had a very different view of it, because there was things like, you beat time on my head, my knuckles grazed the cabinet, you stumbled, and as you read it more carefully, it was a drunk guy beating his son. It was not this beautiful dance. And it had everything to do with that reader response, that experience. My friend had an alcoholic father. I've had many alcoholic relatives, so we recognized it, whereas the 5 other people in the room didn't see it that way. So their response was warm and fuzzy and happy, and we were like, this is not a happy poem. So that's where reader response plays in, based on your experiences, what you know, your knowledge. I've actually used that poem here at Anderson Schools, and I'm so depressed that the majority of kids pick up what it means, and not as many see the warm, fuzzy stuff. Most of them are like, oh yeah, that's clearly some dude under the influence beating his kid. Well, that's sad. You guys all know that. Okay. This assumes that the reader is responsible for making meaning from a story, and it downplays the author's role in the process. So I don't care what the author meant. We care what you got from it. The reader's relationships to events within the text, or ability to relate to experiences within the text, is an important part of the experience. So how did the text make you feel? What parts were you able to identify with? What did it remind you of? Each of these questions is a valuable part of the reading process. Imagine when you guys go see movies and you have different experiences than your friends. You're like, I loved it because it reminded me of this thing, or I related to this part. And other people are like, I just didn't get that. Right? We all have our own experiences and feelings there. And then finally, the Marxist lens or social class lens. I'll almost always call it a Marxist lens. And this is about the concept of the haves and the have-nots. Capitalists versus the working class. The main objective is to establish this concept of the working class revolt against the haves, to redistribute societal power. This takes a look at power structures in a piece. This is about those who are wealthy or have power. Wealthy and power are interchangeable. It's not always money. Power is a currency. So who has power, who does not? Usually in most texts it has to do with who has money and who does not. But sometimes that isn't always the case. So taking a look at the role that different social classes have and how they function. How are they portrayed? What do they look like? What colors are used to represent these people? How do they talk? What do they sound like? What are their jobs? And we'll be taking a look at several pieces and taking a look from a social class lens. I do believe there's another slide of socialist stuff. Maybe. Continuing then with that Marxist criticism, examining the portrayal of social class and power structures. Which characters are from higher social classes? Which are from lower? Who has money, power, or advantage? Who does not? What are the results? How do the different class portrayals work to reproduce or maintain certain social beliefs and practices? So not just how does it play out in the text, but how is it maintaining the world outside of the text? And really taking a look at how Disney films and general any kids films maintain the current status quo. Keep the wealthy wealthy and the poor poor. Even in some of your most favorite texts. So I'm going to use an example here from Lion King, and I am going to show you 4 different lenses. Thinking about the story of Lion King, how many of you do not know the story of Lion King? Excellent. It would be the story of Hamlet. It is just a Hamlet retelling. So from a feminist perspective, looking at the helpless role of females in their society. The female lions are used to provide food and care for the young. Yet it's the males that have all the power. When Mufasa dies, his power transfers to either his son or his brother. His wife is never considered. Nala is clearly stronger than Simba, yet she's still less than him. There's a feminist lens of Lion King. A Marxist lens of Lion King. The upper class, the lions, are trying to maintain power over the unhappy lower class, the hyenas. The lower class represents the privileges of better food and hunting grounds from the upper class that the upper class maintains. This conflict causes a rebellion of the lower class against the upper class, which disrupts the normal social order and causes chaos and destruction. Does that happen in Lion King? Still true? Different lens. A psychoanalytic lens, looking from a psychological perspective. It's a classic case of sibling rivalry. Scar is savagely jealous of his much stronger and better looking older brother. Right?
A lion can be better looking.
Might I say better?
Might I say better looking? Well, okay, Scar versus Mufasa can also be viewed as the classic struggle to overcome feelings of guilt or inadequacy, both of which Simba has after the death of his father. A narratology. Simba represents the classic hero quest, so that archetypal lens. Simba suffers from a loss of a father figure and must go off on a journey to grow into his destiny. During his journey, he meets tricksters, Timon and Pumbaa, who also act as his helpers and find a mentor, the crazy monkey with a stick. Nala also acts as the herald as she upsets the sleepy equilibrium in which Simba has lived and starts his growth. He then has enough strength, both mental and physical, to overcome the villain and restore everything to order. I have not changed the story of Lion King, but we've changed the perspective in which we looked at it based on the lens we applied. Okay? Yeah, we're not looking at Rapunzel right now. Let's talk about archetypes very, very briefly. With only 7 minutes, so I'm going to do it super brief, and we get down to the definitions. We're going to talk about archetype versus stereotype. An archetype is the pattern by which a character, setting, or plot is created. It is the pattern. It's the stencil. It's the cookie cutter. I know I want to tell a certain story. I've been joking around for the last few days about that Hallmark love story. I know I want to tell a Hallmark story. These certain elements must exist. I know the pattern. You know the pattern of a horror film. You know the pattern of a high school teen movie. You know the pattern of a romance. You know the pattern of a fairy tale. If I say I want to write a hero's journey, I must have all of these parts. This is different from a stereotype, because a stereotype is a widely held but fixed and oversimplified image of an idea of a particular type of person. An archetype is where a character or story starts, but you change it up, you make it different. A stereotype is where it ends. It's never more than just those widely held beliefs. They're not broad, they're not complex. They're the most simple, dumbed down versions of something. The easiest way then is obviously then to start looking at some examples, right? So an archetype is where a character starts, a stereotype is where a character ends.
I'm not.
Let's take a look at some examples. Okay. What is this a stereotype of? A dumb blonde. What other stereotypes can we come up with? They're awful. Stereotypes are terrible. So, what kinds of stereotypes? That's it? We can only
She's
think of dumb
childish.
blondes? I don't need just about her. What other stereotypes can you come up with?
Oh. You guys
someone for an
slow
example.
things that
Yeah. Because suddenly these fall under hurtful, racist,
Mexicans only eat
Sexist.
tacos.
Mexicans only eat tacos.
That's
What
pretty good,
else? You guys know stereotypes. Tell me some stereotypes.
She said
Women
Chinese-
can't drive. What else?
Chinese people can't.
Chinese people can't drive. What else about Chinese people?
They can't see. They
They're
only eat
apparently
rice.
smart. They at least get that one. They're smart.
They can't see.
That they can't see. What
Okay.
else? Yes, this is the place to say them. Get them
They're
out.
short.
What other stereotypes?
Yeah, makes sense why you're
Glasses
short.
are smart.
People with glasses are smart.
Yes, you are.
Absolutely not.
People with big shoes are there.
I mean, socks.
Which group of people has the most stereotypes about them?
Blonde women.
Black people.
Black people.
Yeah, that's actually a better answer.
Come on. What are they?
Thugs.
They're thugs.
Fried chicken.
Fried chicken,
Watermelon.
watermelon.
They can play basketball.
They can play basketball.
Criminal.
What now?
They ain't got no dad.
They don't have a dad. Now that is a rough one.
Ghetto, ratchet.
They live in the ghetto, they're ratchet. We can switch that, the flip side is often white people can't dance. Most of them can't, but there's still some. There's still some. It ain't me, okay? These things, white men can't jump, also probably true, right? We understand stereotypes. Notice that stereotypes are hurtful. Are widely held beliefs just about a group of people, but is not true about all of these people. So now let's think about archetypes. This is where an author starts and begins to build a story, and the characters differ. There are many different archetypes, and not all of them are used in every instance. But if I know I want to tell a fantasy story, I want to tell a fairy tale, what are things I need to have in my fantasy story?
Fairy godmother.
Yeah, maybe a fairy godmother.
Magic.
Magic. Maybe dragons.
Kingdoms.
Like an animal.
Must have pet sidekick.
Monsters.
Monsters.
Powers.
We said magic, powers, something like these. Okay? Usually castles. They're generally medieval-ish. Are all fantasy novels this case? Or fantasy stories like this? Okay? We usually see the hero's journey among fantasy. You guys studied hero's journey at some point. Yes, it was before me, but you should have
That was
studied
in
it.
Callan, so it was
I was like, it
particularly good.
wasn't
I mean, it was
pretty
pretty
good.
good actually.
Well, I
I was like, I
One
thought he
lesson
covered it
he
fairly
did.
well.
It was pretty good.
He didn't last year. They didn't do the Odyssey.
They did it?
No, don't even get me started. They did not do the Odyssey last year. That's literally like a national standard, but it's okay. Okay, the hero's journey. There's some person, some hero who does not, reluctant hero, doesn't know that they're special. They must go on a journey. They have friends. They need a mentor. They learn that they can do these things. They overcome challenges. We'll finish talking about the text tomorrow. Reading tonight, WA, tonight. WA, it's definitely get back clean. Bye.
The thing with Quizlet was down.
I'll pour that in.
Oh, did you grab one?
Carol grabbed one for me yesterday.
Perfect.
So I had all second period. I was gonna do it. And then card for it.
Oh, that's always lovely. You'll get there. I mean, you have the week.
The whole week, yeah. Fun.
We did that last year.
Because people don't want to get rid of them.
At the Halo Stars one time, we had leftover Day of the Dead balloons, and we were handing them out for free. And so they let me do the final announcements after sucking in the helium, and it was fun. And that was the highlight of my night.
Syllabuster.
Okay, so what's up with the pajama pants? Me and Riley were talking about this the other day. Like,
Why do you give a fuck?
no, 'cause, like, they say we can't wear them.
My
And
pajama pants are because I don't give a shit about what they say to me, and I'm gonna.
Cynthia's like a lost
I don't-
child between two parents are fighting.
I just don't understand how my pants affect my ability to learn.
I don't either.
So, unprofessional or not, it's school.
The parents are still
A D-lunch.
Okay.
Oh my God, so
Fuck those up, dude. I'm gonna. It's potatoes and like a oil. You know, like a simple oil. I like that shit. It needs seasoning and everything. Imagine that sauce on potatoes, but the mini potatoes right there. I'm gonna fuck them up.
I've never tried it.
I'll let you try one. Alright then. Never mind. You.
You lost your one and only chance.
Yeah.
I told you the other day. I showed her and she goes,
You ready to go?
I didn't go into
Yeah.
I still need to. But she's like, what'd you say, Mary?
That's crazy. That's not bad. My
Yeah, that's literally.
If you look at my knee, it's like purple.
Ugh, it's gross.
If you check them, so.
I don't know, but I do need the bar.
it's unfortunate that somebody did because now,
I'll be on top of that.
right, or I was blamed for it and it wasn't me.
It's okay.
Oh my god, is that real? Like, good Christ.
Why is Bo?
It, oh,